All right, so this morning I'm going to focus on 3 different topics. First off, essentially I'm going to show you 2 different ways that we can use Luminate CRM to create groups of people or a list of people that we want to email to, and then pass that information along to Luminate Online. So that'll be the first thing. And then next we're going to talk about an operation or process that I call cross-referencing. And essentially what we're going to be doing is connecting our donation forms and our donation campaigns inside of Luminate Online with campaigns and designations inside of Luminate CRM. That's really important because without having that cross-reference set up, when a transaction does take place, those transactions won't actually make it to Luminate CRM. So it's really that cross-reference that you'll see that actually makes sure those records, if you will, those donations, recurring gifts, pledges, push to Luminate CRM without any manual intervention. And then finally, we will take a look at the place inside of Luminate Online where we will go to see any sync errors that might exist once we go live. And Lindsay, I don't know if this exists for Luminate Online and Razor's Edge or not, but there's a place in Luminate Online that lists, we call them like QPM errors, Q problem management. Does that exist for RE as well? Okay. So you're
I am familiar with it. It doesn't show it in RE, but I check it in LO, and so that's where,
Gotcha. Then that's where it'll stay also now with the integration between LO and LCRM. So we'll take a quick look at that as well. So really 3 different topics to get through this morning. Probably the easiest training you guys are going to have as far as LCRM goes. So that's good.
That's so funny because to me it sounds the most like intense, but glad that you say that.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty laid back and easy. So if not at the end, definitely otherwise. So
good deal.
All right, so let's start with creating groups inside of Luminate CRM. And really there's 2 different ways that we can go ahead and do this. I think one, which is really the most easiest and really completely automatic, is with the use of those classification types that we've talked about in the past. And again, when we're looking at a contact record, let me open up mine here. And again, this is not your database, by the way. I'm using our Cathexis sandbox this morning because it is already integrated with Luminate Online. And everything that I'm showing you this morning, it's important to have that integration up and running. And unfortunately, you guys don't quite have that yet. So, but so we've talked about classification types before, and essentially, again, what that classification type is how is somebody interacting with your organization. And this is actually not on the page layout, so I'm going to add it here. You know, might be a board member or a former board member or any special groups that you have that are a part of Darkness to Light. Sometimes people use staff or public speakers or anybody who is interacting specifically with you. We might put them into a classification type here. So let me add that here. There we go. Well, something is going on here. I apologize. I cannot actually get this to show up here. Oh, boy. Hang on a second. Oh, good old Blackbot expired my instance of Luminate CRM. So that is fun.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Blackbot. All right. So let's do this a little bit different way here. Let me log in as another organization here really quick. All right, so classification types. Let me look at my record that I know exists here. I've got a few of them actually, it looks like. All right, so here's my classification types related list here. In this case, this organization uses volunteer as one of their examples. and then another one might be donor, let's say. Okay. When we are using classification types, the first thing, and essentially again, to group people together, the first thing we need to do is actually create a classification type. Okay. And so the way we're going to go ahead and do that is we're going to go ahead and find our configuration tab. And there's going to be a link here called classification types. Now this portion should be a review from when we looked at contacts a while back and how to create them in one of our first trainings. But all we do is come to our classification types and we click new. And I'm going to create one and I'm just going to call this divine sample. Okay, we'll click save. And everybody that is important to being a part of this divine sample classification type, you could then go ahead and add them to this classification type. So if I go back to Matt's record here, and again, a more realistic example would be board member or some other group that's purposefully interacting with D2L or with D2L.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah. I
have a question, and you might get into this later, but how does the synchronization happen? Is it, I don't know how to say it, like what we create in here goes to LO, or is it kind of the other way around? Yeah,
it goes to LO, and I'm going to show you that as part of this also.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to show you how this all works. So the classification type piece here, again, essentially once it's created, we're then deciding who gets to be part of this group, right, this classification. So I'm going to add this as one of Matt's. Okay. Let's say, down the road we get 10, 20, 30 people that all want to be part of this divine, or we want to be a part of this divine sample group. Now what happens is that when I go into Luminate Online here, is that one of the ways that we can create groups inside of Luminate Online is going to Constituent 360 and then Groups. And a button that I do not, it might exist because you're integrated with RE, I'm not quite sure if it does or not, but a button that will exist when you have integrated with LCRM is this button that says Map a new group to an offline segment. Does this currently exist?
Yeah, we use that. Well, we did use that to group up with RE, yeah.
Okay, so this might be perhaps a similar process. So I'm going to click this new group. And first off, we'll give it a name like we do for all of our groups. And I like to make sure that whatever the title is of my classification type, then I want to make sure that my group name is also the same inside of Luminate Online. It's just very easy to go ahead and cross-reference. Security category is fine with general. In group type, this is a required field, so we have to make sure we select a group type here. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and find, if there's a sample one in here perhaps, or something like that. I'll just grab, let's see, what do they have here? I'll just call this external for now. Now the next part is the important part. And Lindsay, if you've done this, something like this already, definitely let me know. But I have a section here called Associated Offline Logical Segment Information. And essentially what's listed here. What was that?
Yeah, this is how we've had to do it in the past.
Okay, so we've got a listing of different campaigns from Luminate CRM. And then also, the very bottom, this organization has a lot of campaigns that they're using. Sorry. The very bottom of the campaigns list, though, oh my goodness, there are also classification types. And so one of these is going to be called,
there they are.
Oh my goodness, divine sample, right here. And so what happens is that I can select the divine sample option from the pick list, periodically rebuild this group membership, and selecting once per day is fine. Make sure it's at the latest and greatest, and click Save. And what's going to happen now is Yep.
This is probably for later, so I'm so sorry, but I just want to I'll write it down too, but we just had an issue, and Blackbaud said you shouldn't rebuild your group once per day and also rebuild your email once per day. That can give you an error.
Are you talking about your recurring list of emails?
Yes.
Okay. So what did they tell you how often to rebuild it?
He didn't. He actually said don't rebuild it. The group, if you already have your email query set up to rebuild. And
this is not an email query though.
No, I know. I was just, so we might get there later on, but I didn't know if you had heard that.
No, for this example here, because we're not using a query to create this group inside of LO, and I might be missing partially what you're saying, and if so, I apologize. But when we are creating these groups based off of a classification type in Luminate CRM, I've always, and I guess have never been told otherwise or had any issues by saying, number one, we have to rebuild this group for sure, or else we're not going to get the latest and greatest updates coming from LCRM to Luminate Online. And so then I also rebuild this once per day in the cases where we might be adding or removing people with a specific classification type.
Which totally makes sense. I'm getting ahead, so I apologize. But I guess, so let's say you went then and used this group for an email series.
Okay.
And this was the group you used. And so for the email series, you can also choose to rebuild once per day, once per week. And so apparently you're not supposed to have them both set up, is what I have gathered through the week, because we've had some issues with our series. But we can skip that. I just was wondering if you heard that ever.
I have personally not heard that. Not so that it's definitely not true, and obviously if you guys were experiencing errors, then there's something to be said there. But I do think it's important. I mean, what portion, like when you were talking about rebuilding part of your email, like where in the email, or what exactly were you speaking of?
I guess there's a setting in there if it's going to be a reoccurring email. And it asks you, the same exact thing shows up when you, like, periodically rebuild. But we can go there. We can do that separately. I know there's other people on the call, so it just into my head. I
apologize. Take a look at that later.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Now, yeah, we'll come back to that later. So anyways.
Sounds good.
What's going to happen here with this classification type is that as we add people or remove people to be part of this classification type inside of Luminate CRM, this group in Luminate Online is automatically going to update for us. We don't have to do anything extra in Luminate CRM. We don't have to refresh or rebuild inside of Luminate Online. In fact, if I look at my members right now, you're going to see here's Matt Devine, who we indicated a second ago was a part of this classification type. It's all going to update for us automatically once we have this set up inside of the Luminate Online environments. Okay. Now, when it comes to these classification types, it's important to know that we shouldn't be adding people to these groups directly from Luminate Online. The reason being is that if we add somebody to this group in Luminate Online, it's not as if they're automatically going to have that classification type in Luminate CRM. It does not work that way. Okay. If we were to go ahead and remove the classification type record from Matt's record, then he would also then be removed from the group inside of Luminate Online. Okay. So I think it's an extremely efficient way when you are trying to create groups or classify people, and you know that these are folks that you ultimately want to send emails to for whatever reason, that there's no extra work that needs to be done as far as going and trying to create a group inside of the Luminate Online environment. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about this process?
I just want to make sure I'm following. So if we make a classification change in LCRM, it will sync up and go into the group that we've already created, but vice versa will not work.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct. And it's a one-time setup thing as well. So
okay.
once you set up, go into Luminate Online and you create that group and select your offline logical segments. Once you do that one time, you don't have to do anything else again. You just start adding and removing people to that classification type at Luminate CRM, and then you're good to go.
Okay.
Good. Now, the second way that we can pass groups of people to Luminate CRM, from Luminate CRM to Luminate Online, is actually creating a report and building out a list of people that we would like to send an email to. Okay. So, for example, I can come into reports here, and just like we did last week in training, and create a new report. And what we're looking for here is we always send emails to contacts, right? We can't actually send emails to accounts. So we send emails to contacts. And so I find my contacts and accounts report. And I can create a new report here. And again, I like to start from a blank canvas, so I'm just going to get rid of all those fields for now and then make sure that when I start, everybody's in the pool, so all accounts and contacts I'm going to start with before I filter down. And regardless of created date, I want to include everybody in my initial list here. Okay. So this is then where we get to use our reporting functionality, specifically our filters, and filter down who exactly we want to include in this list that we're going to be sending out via email. Now, for this case, I'm going to make it very simple and just simply filter for myself. So I'm going to put in here last name equals Divine. And just to make sure everything's right, I'm going to put in my first name field, and you don't have to even do this. Last name field and account. Okay. So one of the final things that we do need to include here is my contact ID. And this is important because for the next steps, this is part of what's going to help ensure that this list of people gets pushed to the Luminate Online environment. And again, obviously, if we're building a list inside of Luminate CRM for email purposes, we're going to have something much more dynamic to use than simply picking people with the last name of Divine or Smith or whatever it is. Giving history, interaction history with us, where they live, whatever it is, the details that you guys might have and what you want to use for drilling down and creating these email lists, this is what you would use, obviously, for a filter. But once you get down to your final list, we can go ahead and click Run Report. Okay. Now, one of the buttons here that we didn't go over in training is I've got a button here that says Add to Campaign. And essentially what this process is going to do is after we've created our listing of people here, we're going to add these people to a campaign as campaign members, as they're called. And essentially what a campaign member is somebody who is somehow involved in a campaign that we're running. And then because these folks are campaign members, they also show up as an offline logical segment in Luminate Online that we can target in an email. Okay? So once we've created our mailing list here, the next thing I'm going to do is come over to my Campaigns tab. I'm going to create a new campaign here. I'm going to call this Divine Sample. Again, remember when we're creating a campaign, we're just going to go ahead, in this case, and use our default campaign type and default campaign category, and click Save. Now, when we're adding people to a campaign as campaign members inside of Luminate CRM, a couple things. We know typically that when we have a campaign, it's to be used for tracking our fundraising efforts, donations, etc., that are coming in. And so if we want to send out an email specific to those people that we're hoping will make donations to our campaign effort, we can actually use that campaign if it's already been created instead of creating a brand new one like I did a second ago. So once I've got my list narrowed down of people that I want to target, I've got my campaign created, I'm going to click that Add to Campaign button here. I'm going to go ahead and look up and find that campaign, my list, and then I've got a member status field that I need to go ahead and pick from, sent or responded. I'm going to go ahead and say that my member status here is sent because I'm going to be sending them some sort of mail or, in our case, email. And then I'll click Add to Campaign. Then when it's finished, you will see in this case 41 new members have been added to the Divine sample campaign. You can click Done. Now if I come to my campaign record and do a little refresh, keep your eyes on my campaign members related list here. It refreshes and now I've got 41 people in here, all ready to go. So that's really step one. That takes care of the process inside of Luminant CRM. Now, inside of Luminant Online, when I'm creating this group, very much the same process as we did for the classification type a second ago. I'm going to come to Constituent 360 and then Groups. Again, map a new group to an offline segment. We'll call this one Divine Sample Campaign. We'll pick a group type. And now this time, here is my Divine Sample Campaign that I created just a second ago inside of Luminant CRM. And so I'll select that list here. Now, in this case, when I'm sending lists of people from Luminant, or when I'm creating that list of campaign members inside of Luminant CRM, and I'm selecting it here inside of Luminant Online, let me click Save here really quick. I don't necessarily need to pick an option to rebuild this group. I can. And the reason why I would do that is if I am ever only going to be adding additional people to this campaign as campaign members inside of Luminant CRM. All right. What's going to happen is that every time, let's say, I started this operation or this process with a report, right? And as we know from training, these reports update automatically for us. So if we've got a brand new contact where the last name was Divine, all of a sudden we'd have 42 contacts here with the last name of Divine, okay? Just because a report updates, however, it doesn't mean that these folks are automatically going to get added to my campaign here as campaign members. We'd have to go through the process of running this report again, clicking Add to Campaign, and then that would ultimately add that 42nd person as a campaign member. In this scenario, when we have our periodically rebuild this group checkbox checked, this is going to make sure that this extra person gets added to this group inside of Luminant Online. So that's why I kind of started to say, if we are only adding people when going down this route, definitely let's go ahead and we'll check that periodically rebuild checkbox. However, what will happen is that if, let's say, Paula here gets married, and our database is updated and her last name changes to Smith, she will no longer be part of this report. And so even if we came in and click the Add to Campaign button here again, all this is doing is adding people to the campaign. There is no report and no process that's automatically going to remove Paula from my campaign members list. So I'd have to come in here and manually remove her if I did no longer want her as part of my listing. And this can become a tedious process because we don't always know, for example, in this very simple case, like when somebody's last name changes. Much more robust, something like giving history, well, we're definitely not going to go through one by one and see if everybody that was previously part of my campaign members list is also still part of the latest and greatest report results. Okay. Once I've built this group inside of Luminate Online, you can see here when I rebuild this, and I might need to refresh it here as well. Sometimes this takes an extra second or two. Here's my 41 people that were part of my report, all ready to get an email from me now on Luminate Online, provided they're not opted out and things like that. Okay. Going the route of creating a report, adding folks with the Add to Campaign button, and then creating that group in Luminate Online, in a lot of cases for many organizations is really good for a one-off scenario. That's because for most organizations, as they're building these lists, people are going to get added and or removed for different reasons based off of whatever your filters are. And again, like I mentioned, when we run this process, new people will always be added as campaign members. But unfortunately, if they drop off of my report list and already exist as a campaign member, they will not be removed automatically. Which is why a lot of organizations will say, hey, this is great, let's run a report, create this campaign, get these people over for this email, that's awesome. But if I come back and do this in another week or another month, and I know that based off of my filters, people probably are going to fall off, then let's go ahead and perhaps delete this campaign that I've already sent emails from and create a brand new one to make sure that I've got the latest and greatest list that I want to send emails to. What do you think, Lindsay?
So, two questions. Let's say you kept the campaign and you're like, oh, I can use this again for my LO group. I just need to remove 2 people. So if you do actually manually remove them in LCRM and you have your group in LO rebuilding, it will update those people and remove them.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And then, like you were just saying, if you just delete the campaign because you're going to run a new report, will it delete the group campaign in LO?
That's correct.
Okay.
Same thing for the classification type as well. If you have a classification type and then ultimately you delete that inside of Luminate CRM, when your group tries to refresh in Luminate Online, that will no longer be an accurate group as well.
Okay.
The other thing to point out about these campaigns is that the ones that appear in this list here are all campaigns that are marked as active inside of Luminate CRM. So if this little checkbox is checked here, it's indicating, at least from an LO perspective, that this campaign, even if there's no people that are a part of it, it will exist in this list here inside of Luminate Online. I think this organization that we're looking at right now has a significant number of really, really old campaigns that are active, which is why this list is so long.
And I have one more question, and we might get to this, so just tell me if so. Let's say the groups we already have built in LO. I'm trying to think of it. I mean, I could use board members or staff as an example, which that's an easy one because we could manually do that in LCRM because it's not a lot. There's not very many people. But let's just say you had a group established in LO and you wanted to bring it over to LCRM. Is that possible?
It is not.
Okay, you'd have to like export it and then import it into LCRM, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's one way. The other thing that, the other way obviously is to, if it was a small list in LO, then I would just maybe go to, from record to record and Luminate CRM and add the classification type that way.
Yep, exactly. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good point. And so if you have groups in Luminate Online currently, like board member or staff, or again, something else that fits into this classification type mold, again, how people are interacting with your organization, then perhaps we consider stop using those groups in Luminate Online and recreate them as classification types in Luminate CRM. That way, you still have your email list, but then also you can actually see what these people are a part of from the LCRM perspective, where otherwise you don't know.
Right. So there must be a way in LCRM where, let's say you have 100 people, and they might already be in LCRM, but you're going to upload a new list, and I'm assuming if they have the same like email or something that they won't be duplicated. But can you put in like can you put in a classification so that populates for those 100 people?
Yep, you can apply a classification to people when you're doing an import. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Now, it's not part of the Luminate CRM platform. There are multiple tools out there, dozens of tools, that allow you to import data into Salesforce, and by therefore then importing it obviously into Luminate CRM. So if you guys are ever interested in learning some of that, I'm happy to show you. It's really the same process that I use when I migrate your data to Luminate CRM from RE. So.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions about this portion for now?
I don't think so.
Okay. No, I think we're good.
All right, cool. So let's jump ahead now to our next topic, which was cross-referencing donation forms and campaigns as they exist in Luminate Online to the Luminate CRM environment. And again, the purpose of this is to ensure that, well, really ensure two things. Number one, most important, that when a transaction comes in from Luminate Online, it automatically pushes to Luminate CRM. That's number one. But then number two, what happens is that it allows us to go ahead and process credit cards in Luminate CRM as well by having this cross-reference set up. Now, Lindsay, I'm guessing you've done some cross-referencing between LO and RE. Maybe not.
No, I don't know that I have.
Okay. Well, this will be good.
Once you show me kind of what we're doing, then I'll be able to.
Okay. So I'm going to hop into Luminate Online here and go to fundraising and donation management. But before I do, I'm actually going to open up your instance of Luminate Online as well. So currently, let me ask, is anybody on the call, have you guys worked with the donation forms inside of Luminate Online?
Yeah, Catherine does. I think Catherine's on the call and she does.
Okay. Yes.
Great. Excellent. So when you're setting up campaigns and then obviously the donation forms that those campaigns are a part of, obviously you know that there are different steps to go ahead and run through throughout this process. Okay. One of them here is a step 4 where we're cross-referencing to Raiser's Edge. And is this something that you currently do?
This is Catherine. I've never done that, but I usually, I feel like Kendall or Lindsay are usually the ones that actually like set up the form, and then I go in and just like edit copy and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've done it twice maybe with help. So I do, like I've seen this page before for sure.
Okay. This is essentially the same process that you've done here for Raiser's Edge. We're going to be doing very much the same thing inside of our for Luminate CRM. It's going to look a little bit different. There are a couple different options. Let me go ahead and point those out. So let me go ahead and grab one of the campaigns here. I've been logged out, so let's try this again. Okay. So in Luminate Online, and this is important for the cross-reference to Luminate CRM like it is for RE, we actually have 2 steps in connecting our donation forms in Luminate Online to the proper place inside of Luminate CRM. Okay. So as we're setting up our donation campaigns in Luminate Online, again, step 4 is going to present us with a couple different options. The first thing that we need to do is it says here, Luminate CRM campaign. So essentially, we are going to select a campaign from the list below and make that our selected value so that whenever a donation comes in, it is applied to that campaign inside of Luminate CRM and then begins tracking, obviously, with all of our donations here. Okay, so selecting this again, the same process right from RE. I'm looking through my list here, and again, these all are campaigns from Luminate CRM. If I wanted to, I could scroll through every page, or I could begin typing in a word that exists in the campaign and select that option, and it'll become my selected option here. All right. Now, I like to recommend that we create the campaigns inside of Luminate CRM before we come into Luminate Online and do our cross-referencing. But if we don't do that, it's okay. We don't have to do it that way. There's actually a button here that says Create CRM Object. And if I click it, it will redirect me to the Luminate CRM environment where I can create a brand new campaign on the fly. And then when I click Save, it'll redirect me back to that Luminate Online donation campaign where I can continue setting up the cross-reference. Okay. But my recommendation definitely is to go ahead and first set up your campaign in CRM and then come to Luminate Online and do your cross-reference. Now, once we've set a campaign up, we then also need to go ahead and grab a designation as well. Restricted, unrestricted, obviously you guys have, a dozen or so different designations that we've moved to. And so we need to make sure that we're selecting a designation to go along with our donation form. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up your donation form here really quick. And so essentially what's going to happen is that when somebody comes in and makes a donation, obviously they're going to pick an amount, select whether or not they want this to be a recurring gift, provide their payment information, their donor information, and then all this other good stuff here that they have an option to select from. And then what's going to happen is based off of us selecting and setting up these cross-references, in this example here, when that transaction goes through, that $25 is going to hit the Divine Sample campaign inside of Luminate CRM and become a transaction listed here. And then also, that donation is going to have, let me open up a donation here really quick to show you this. The donation is going to receive, where'd my donations go? Again, here's our designations. When we set up this cross-reference, our donation is going to receive the research designation. All right, so essentially, we set this up at the donation campaign level, and it's sort of our default. It's our fallback. It's part of the setup process here. Really, it's just 2 steps in this case. Picking the campaign that we want the donations to go to, that are part of that donation campaign in Luminate Online, and then also picking the designation in Luminate CRM we want those donations to go to. Any questions with that process?
No.
Okay. So once we've set up the cross-reference with our campaign, And again, this to me can become confusing as we start because we're talking about a campaign in Luminate CRM. We're also talking about donation campaigns and Luminate Online. Again, completely two separate entities, separate things. We're just connecting them together. But once we set up that cross-reference between the campaigns, the next thing we're going to do is make sure we set up the cross-reference between the donation form within the donation campaign as well. Another very easy process. We're doing the same thing twice in this case. Okay? Once again, we're selecting the donation campaign in Luminate CRM to connect to the donation form in Luminate Online. And then we're selecting, again, the designation from Luminate CRM to connect to the donation form in Luminate Online. Now, and I can take a look at this really quick here, but you guys might know without me clicking around. When you set up your donation campaigns inside of Luminate Online, are you typically only putting one donation form in per donation campaign, or are you putting multiple donation forms into a single campaign inside of Luminate Online? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay too. Let me just take a quick peek here.
I would think, I don't know, maybe Catherine knows the answer to that. I would think it's just one donation form, but.
And that's fine. That's because many organizations will do that. I see. In this case, maybe we've got two of them here.
Per campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've always just done one, like a donation campaign, and then did like one form underneath it.
Awesome. Perfect. So in that case, what you're going to make sure of is that when you're setting up your cross-references, again, when we do this once at the campaign level and then next at the donation form level, you're going to set those both up exactly the same way. Okay. If, by chance, you ever move to creating a single campaign with multiple donation forms within it, it is okay to have a different cross-reference at the donation form level than what's been set up at the campaign level. Just so you guys are aware of that. In those cases where you have multiple donation forms, again, in the same campaign, the cross-references do not need to be the same.
It's kind of, for that, is it, like, is there a reason why, like, that way might be doing it better than how we're doing it now, like one-to-one, or is it just kind of like preference?
Yeah, it's more so preference than anything else. There definitely is no right or wrong, for sure. Some organizations, for example, in Luminate Online, they might create a campaign for it and make it very general and call it events. And if they're ever doing any fundraising around events, then they put all their donation forms into an event campaign. For some organizations, if they've got like a year-end giving thing and they've got multiple different donation forms that they're sending people to, maybe all those year-end donation forms are all part of the same year-end campaign. Definitely no right or wrong here. All the information and all the reporting is going to flow to the exact same spot inside of the Luminate CRM platform, the way we want to be able to see it and report on it. It's just more of a preference from the Luminate Online perspective than anything else.
Kind of how you like organize and look at things?
Yep. I mean, for some organizations who do a lot of different donation forms and options, in some ways I like to think about the donation campaign inside of Luminate Online is almost like a folder. And within this folder, I add in a number of different files, and it sounds silly, but my files essentially are my donation forms within my folder. So just kind of grouping them all together. Before coming to Cathexis, I worked for an organization, and we had a bunch of peer-to-peer fundraising events, bike rides, and marathons or different races and things like that. And so for each one of our race seasons, we would have like a 2017 Free to Breathe campaign. And then we had events in 40 different cities around the country. So we would take all 40 of those donation forms and put them into the one 2017 events folder, for example. For us, it just was more efficient than having 40 different campaigns for every single year. The list started to grow. So that way we just had our smaller list of campaigns, the donation campaigns on Luminate Online, I should say, and then within we could see all those, those 40 donation forms, for example. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Definitely. Is there any questions that you guys have about this cross-reference setup?
No, I mean, when you say it and go through it, it makes sense.
I mean, it's really for you guys. It'll be like that. Like I said, that 4-step process, right? You pick your donation. I'm sorry, you pick your campaign and designation within the donation campaign record in Luminate Online, and then you go in and you do the same exact thing inside of the donation form itself.
Okay.
Lindsay, one of the things that we'll need to do, and we're going to talk about this next week, because all of your donations that exist in Luminate Online are going to get pushed over to Luminate CRM, we have to set up cross-references for all of them in advance. And it's really when Blackbaud tells us to go ahead and do this, we can go ahead and do it. And it's really easy to do. But I'm going to be sharing a worksheet with you. And essentially what we're going to need to do in that worksheet is that for every donation campaign that has funds or we've raised funds in it for, and then every donation form, we want to, in our Excel spreadsheet, sort of indicate what designations and what campaigns in Luminate CRM should match up with these from a historical standpoint.
Okay.
Okay. So that'll be a big piece. Without that, when we turn on the integration, those donations won't actually come to Luminate CRM like we want it to. Instead, they'll create a bunch of errors and we'll have a big mess on our hands.
Okay. Don't want that.
No. Nope. All right. So again, we'll talk about that next week, though.
Okay.
And so, any questions at all about the cross-reference piece?
You know where if you go back and like in red, it says, right now it says something about connecting with RE.
Yep.
So I guess that'll just change to LCRM.
Yeah. Every reference to Luminate Online, every reference to RE will go away completely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, even things like silly things like the Razor's Edge Fund, the Razor's Edge, will that wording change?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you should not see any reference to Razor's Edge once the change takes place.
Okay.
Yep. Definitely. All right. So the last thing we want to talk about today then, which is, Lindsay, if you've seen this before, there won't be much to talk about, I guess, is that Luminate management piece here. Or not Luminate management, I'm sorry, Luminate. Let's see here. Do we not see this in your instance? Hang on one second.
Yeah, we usually go to Illuminate Management, I think. Right at the very end. Yeah.
Let me log in here. Yep, okay, so that's my mistake. We can't get to it, obviously, because they turned off integration. That's why there's nothing.
Right.
Yep, so back in my other instance, you're familiar with what this screen is. I call it the QPM section.
Yep.
And essentially, what this lists for us is all the different errors that might exist in our database, where information is not flowing from Luminate Online to Luminate CRM like it's supposed to, and causing errors as a result. And then Luminate CRM data is not flowing to Luminate Online like it's supposed to, and creating different errors. Now, I'm not sure what existed for RE, but for Luminate CRM, there are 4 different sections. One is all about contact information, syncing or contact records. The next is all about donations. They title this as fundraising. And then finally, or the third one, excuse me, is all about events and event registrations and things like that, something I don't think that'll be applicable for you guys, at least not right away. And then finally, and I can say that, you know, in roughly 5 years of looking at this, I don't know that I've ever seen an other type of error listed here, but anything else that doesn't fit into contacts, events, or donations would fit into this little box right here. Okay. Now, Lindsay, how familiar are you with this section?
Yeah, so this is something I would check. I would get an email message telling me there were errors and check them frequently, and then just from here, what we do is go to view, and then we always rebuild them.
Yep, perfect. So you're familiar very much so with the process. And I'm gonna check one thing in a second. Log back into your instance here. Fixing these though, again, I'm guessing I just want to make sure that these screens look the same. You click the type, and you click the message, and then you got your processes here, and so on and so forth. And
yeah, they look exactly the same.
Okay.
Now,
right.
it's good for Jenny and Catherine to know too, just in case. I don't know that they've ever.
Oh, definitely.
I don't know that they've ever rebuilt those, but just in case one of us was out or.
Absolutely. So when I'm looking at my list of error messages, and first and foremost, you guys have an alert set up. So after we're done looking at this example, I want to jump in to check and make sure that that alert is still there. Okay. So when we want to fix an error, and I'm going to go ahead and click, for example, View. And again, when I click View, what this is showing me is a listing of all the different records, 85 of them, that are trying to push some sort of information from Luminate CRM to Luminate Online, and something is preventing that from happening. Okay, so I'll click View. Now when I click View, I actually then see 4 different errors, I'll call them, as to why information is not being passed like we want it to. I'll grab the first one here, cons invalid attribute value exception. Now, I will tell you nearly 100% of the time, these titles here make no sense to anybody but Blackboard. They're not very easy to determine what this means simply by looking at the title. So I've got a couple sort of tips that I'll share. First and foremost, just always go ahead and click the link right away. All right? When you click the link, it's going to give you, typically, the name of the record that is having trouble syncing, in this case from Luminate CRM to Luminate Online. We can also, again, see how many errors there are. In this case, there are 68 within this group. Okay? And again, we know that they're contact errors. And we, again, can see the directions that the sync. They exist in LCRM, and they don't exist in Luminate Online. Or, in some cases, the records do exist in both spots, but for some reason, the information is no longer passing where one time it was passing. Okay. Now what can I do from this screen? A couple things. Number one, I have another link here that says View Details. View Details link is for the most part going to provide me, or at least try to provide me, with the reason why this information is not syncing. In this case, error. It says Restoration Services Incorporated DBA Serpro of Virginia Beach is longer than the 50-character limit for last name. So essentially, what this is saying is that this is somebody's last name. Really, it's not somebody's last name. I don't know why it's there. But the last name field inside Illuminate Online can only contain 50 characters. That's why the record is not syncing. Once we see this error resolution over the course of time, we're going to know what we need to go ahead and do to fix this. And sometimes Blackbot has done a really good job about telling us what we need to do, or telling us what the issue is at least. And then we need to know that, hey, you should come into Luminate CRM, reduce their last name to fix part of this error. Now, I'm going to fast forward a second. And again, this is what we see when we click that link. If I click XML message, I get a whole bunch of other different code here as well. Okay? This stuff right here is irrelevant to me. I'm not a coder. I'm guessing that most of you guys aren't either. So this is not something that I'm ever going to ask you, and I don't think Blackbaud will ever ask you to dig into unless they're specifically asking you to check something out for them. So we don't need to worry about this XML piece here. The log, however, will give us an idea of what this error message is. All right, so once I've gone ahead and I've gone into Luminance CRM to fix this error, and I could actually get there by clicking the View an LCRM link. This will actually open up this record inside of Luminance CRM. I can go ahead and check this checkbox, and I can click the Rebuild button. What Rebuild is going to do is it's going to go ahead and trigger Luminance CRM to try to push across this sync one more time. Basically, we're saying, okay, service bus, I fixed my error. I'm clicking Rebuild. Try to push this contact record across again since I fixed the last name. And if we've done things right, this error will no longer exist. It will not show up again inside of Luminate Online. But if whatever I did actually didn't solve the problem, typically after a few minutes, if not immediately, that error will reappear in my list again, and I've got to try a different solution. Now, the question is, well, Matt, how do I know if it's not apparent? What is the solution? And I think this is one of the things that Blackbaud really got right in the last couple of years as they're upgrading and updating their products. There's a page, and I can share this with you guys, called QPM Error Resolution. And essentially it's part of their help website here, where it lists off these different sections: contact errors, event errors, fundraising errors, and other errors. Just like we saw a second ago when we were looking at these boxes. They match up: contact, fundraising, events, and then other. And as I expand or click these links here, it gives us a listing of all the different error messages, typically all of them, that I might see here. For example, one of them was my cons invalid attribute value exception. I go ahead and search this page, cons invalid attribute exception, Luminate CRM to Luminate Online. It gives me the message, it gives me the reason for why this message occurred, and then it gives me the steps for resolution. All right. Like I said, Blackbaud, I feel like, has done a pretty good job of trying to help us fix these errors as they occur. So this is always my first stop shop for trying to fix these errors. All right. Now, if we're looking at these errors, and let's say I've gone through and I fixed the issue for restoration, I fixed the error for Daniel and Darren and whoever else is here. One of the other things that I can do is I can click multiple checkboxes at the same time, and then click Rebuild, and it'll rebuild all those records at the same time. If I've gone through and fixed every single error that exists, I can click this checkbox up here. It'll check all those boxes, and then when I click Rebuild, it will try to rebuild all 68 errors that were found. Okay. If I ever want to go ahead and export a listing of an error group, I can check these checkboxes, click my Export button here, and then I've got a little Problem Exports tab. After a minute or two, I'd have a file. It's really a CSV file that I can download and have a deeper dive look at what records are being affected within this error group here. I would say it's not something that I had used or have used a lot, is this export, unless there's just really something funky going on. Typically, I just go ahead and fix the errors and then click the Rebuild button here. Okay. One other thing to point out is that we can view up to 100 results per page. So if I wanted to see all 68, here I could go ahead and do that. Another little tip here, let's say I, for some reason, come across an error, and there are hundreds of them, or maybe we'll just say more than 100. One of the things that I can do up in my URL here is at the very end, It's going to tell me that I can see currently 100 results per page, search results per page. I can actually change it to 200 or any number that I want to, and refresh or click return, and it'll actually show me all the errors, even if it's above 100. That's ever something that is helpful for you to look at.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that.
You know, the last thing that I will point out is that, again, this QPM sort of help section is always will be my first stop shop. If I cannot find an error message listed, the next thing that I will do is I will go into the Blackbaud knowledge base. And I don't know if you guys have used the knowledge base before or know about it, but oftentimes the knowledge base is really, it's sort of like if anybody has ever asked a question or if there's any sort of documentation that Blackbaud has ever delivered and made available to people, it's all listed here and you can search based on the keyword. And so I might go ahead and grab, for example, this error message here and do a search in the knowledge base. And in this case, it tells me, okay, we have information about it in my contact errors section. This is where you can go and find some other details here. Okay, so I would say that it's very rare, although it does happen, that we cannot find the error message in that help section or find it within the knowledge base. Now, the final thing that I will tell you is that even though I think Blackbaud has done a phenomenal job adding like the how-tos for fixing these resolutions in one spot, and they've done a pretty good job of capturing all of them and telling you why they're occurring, there are definitely cases where the resolution is not clear and are not easy to do. And so when you get to situations like that where you actually just can't understand the resolution, or you get to a situation where you actually can't find your error message listed anywhere, you can do two things. Number one, I recommend going first to the Blackbaud chat and letting them know what the error is. And then they will either help you or open up a case and find somebody to help you. Your other option is to come to me, and I can try to get it resolved as well. The reason I tell you to go to Blackbaud first is, quite honestly, because it's free, right? It's their error, or there's an error that's occurred with their environment. They've got support staff that in the past have been very helpful in making these things go away. And if I have to come in and do it, well, Texas will ultimately charge you for my time. So take the free route every single time if you can go ahead and do that.
But they're not as nice.
Any questions with this?
I have one question back on the LO side.
Yes.
And I don't even know if this is a thing, but there was like a connection, of course, between RE and LO. And I think it was under, so if you actually go to data management at where we were before, management.
Yep.
And I think it was under, okay.
What are you looking for? What did it say? I might be able to tell you.
It would just say, like, if you went to queue status or something, and then there'd be a red message at the bottom sometimes, and it would say, server has lost connection, try to reconnect. And then I'd have to go to the integral or IT people and say, hey, it's disconnected, can you reconnect? And I was just wondering, well, does that happen with LO and LCRM? Can we lose connectivity?
It's very rare. Sometimes it does happen. In those cases, there's nothing we can do but let Blackbaud know. Because again, the key, one of the key differences, obviously, with Luminate CRM, the integration is automatic, right? We're not pushing or triggering anything. It's supposed to be automatic. So when that happens, we just need to let Blackbaud know, and they'll get it fixed. But I would say it's extremely rare where that happens. Now, knock on wood, right? I don't want you guys to go live in a couple of weeks and have it happen right away, but it is extremely rare that I've seen where that actually occurs.
Okay.
Yep. Do you guys have any other questions? about this process. I can't, sorry, I'll let you guys answer first before I keep talking. Anything?
No, that was helpful.
Because I can't get to the Luminate management piece, I can't actually see if your alerts are still set up or not. So once our integration is on with Luminate CRM, we'll check to make sure and see if those alerts are there. And if not, we'll go ahead and get those set up again.
Okay.
I mean, the one thing that I recommend also, depending on how your alerts were set up or what was there, this is something that it doesn't hurt to come in and check at least once per week. I know that, and this was a while ago, I had alerts set up for my organization at one time, and I know that they weren't working 100%. So, every morning I started out my morning and making sure that everything was syncing correctly. And so much like duplicate management, where we want to try to make sure we don't have duplicates as much as possible, this is another section that I recommend making sure this is cleaned up and managed as efficiently as possible.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was nice before because if there was an error, it would send me an email message, and then I would know, like, oh, I need to go in there and
check
fix
it out. Yeah, and
yeah.
like I said, we'll make sure that that's set up. Something else to point out while we're in here is that currently this duplicate management tab works. This will completely go away. It'll actually give you a little message that says you have to do your duplicate management in Luminate CRM moving forward. So none of this will be done in Luminate Online. I think I mentioned that when we were actually doing the duplicate management training, but just a heads up, you can still see it, but you won't be able to do anything with it once we are live.
Okay.
And another thing that we're not going to go through during training because it is a bit advanced, but if you've done this before for Ari, just let me know. There's also a way when we're creating fields in Luminate CRM, we also want to create that same field in Luminate Online to create a cross-reference between fields essentially as well and push data back and forth. And so if it's ever something we want to do, there's obviously instructions from Blackbaud for that, but it's something we can always come back in and take a look at. It's just simply not important at this stage. So.
Okay. And I haven't done that before, so I'll remember that it is an option if we need to.
And I mean, one of the things I was going to look at here, because LO for RE is definitely different than LO for LCRM. There are a lot of different fields here, like nickname and salutation. And although a lot of these exist, these fields, same fields, exist inside of LCRM, I'm not exactly sure why these are set up in Luminate Online. I don't know if these are interacting at all with the RE environment. Lindsay, do you know by chance, like?
Some do and some don't. Like when you get down to the bottom and we have some, I know for sure we have like some facility, yes, that workshop info,
Yep.
That was never part of RE, which was something we wanted. But as far as like address and email and that kind of thing, yes.
Yeah, all that basic contact information, address, email, phone number, giving history, transactions, all that stuff integrates back and forth nice and easy. So, yeah. Are these fields, and this is totally off topic, but, and I'm actually going to stop the recording here really quick.